Now, Kia India has been quite successful in carving a place for itself in the MPV segment in India. Yeah, you have the Carnival at one end and the Cirrus at the other, but the Carens has been the one that's brought it the most amount of success. You now have the Kia Clavis. It's a bit flashier, it has a bit more tech and features to it. So what's it really like? Let's find out. Now, naturally, the rear seat is where most of you will spend a lot of time if you are looking at the Kia Clavis. And to start with, it's very familiar to what the Carens was like, but again, there have been some improvements like in the rest of the car. The one thing that I feel is the biggest improvement or the most useful is that you now have this boss mode kind of function, so I can free up a lot of space, as you can see very easily. This was always a very spacious car. Remember, this has a 20 mm longer wheelbase than even the Alcazar and has about a 170 mm longer wheelbase than the Seltos. So this is a spacious car in every sense. So I have, as you can see, a lot of place just to move my feet around, a lot of knee room, a lot of place to put my feet. And those earlier traits of there being this really nice, airy kind of cabin feel to it with the large windows, that's been made better again with this huge panoramic sunroof that's been added. Now, a lot of things again have been carried over from the last version. For example, these shades, they always help. And I still have that blower here for the second row vents. The roof-mounted air vents are a bit better placed in the panoramic sunroof-equipped versions now, although the diffused air function has been lost. You still get two USB ports, a cool storage space and a tray table at the rear. But they could have moved this air purifying kind of arrangement, they could have moved it somewhere else in the middle like how you have it in many cars, or maybe integrated it into the dashboard. It still kind of takes up the space, it looks a bit out of place. So yeah, maybe that could have been changed. Now the seats themselves haven't changed all that much. So I have a lot of back support. As you can see, I'm reclined to a pretty nice angle. I can recline further still, so all that is good. But I do wish it had a bit more thigh support. I'm supported on my sides, and as you can see, even with the panoramic sunroof, I have a decent amount of headroom. The 7-seater bench option has similar legroom, but in some other aspects it betters the captain seats. You have better thigh support here and the space is wide enough to seat 3 relatively easily. In lesser variants, you have most of the creature comfort still intact, and versions without the sunroof give you a few inches more headroom. I think it rides a bit flusher than before. They've also improved the NVH, which is also quite noticeable. The 17-inch wheels over, say, a small broken patch or speed breakers, you do feel it. For example, we're going through the rumble strips, I do feel it a little bit. It has that slight sharp edge, which the 16-inch wheels don't. They're genuinely quite flush and they have that kind of floaty effect to it that you really like in an MPV. So in that case, if downright comfort is your biggest priority, then you should choose a variant with the 16-inch wheels. But this 17-inch is not bad at all. You get that nicer, smarter look. When you start moving or when the road smoothens out, you have a nice, plush, comfortable feel to the car at all times. We did notice on the highway that you have to sometimes add corrections to the steering wheel at higher speeds. The Kia Clavis gets quite a few more features than before. Here's a look at what you get with the HTX Plus and the HTK Plus variants we drove. Safety is better taken care of now with ADAS now becoming available on top trims. Now with the pre-facelift Carens, one of the things that we didn't quite like was that the dash design was quite different from, say, other Kia cars, but that's not the case anymore with the Clavis, because as you can see, it's now been brought in line with what the rest of the Kia range offers. So for example, you have this fabric section here which looks quite nice and premium. There's a soft kind of feeling to it, denim-like feeling to it, which is very similar to what we've seen on cars like the Carnival and even the EV9 to an extent. That's good. Same with these more compact, slightly streamlined air vents. That's very nice as well. It obviously functions with that typical heft that you expect in these Kia offerings. And then you also have this panel here. Now you've seen this in many cars, the EV6 in particular, where you can swap and use them on the... Now, of course, there is some getting used to the fact that there are a lot of capacitive buttons, but the good thing is that you still have controls which are physical, these knobs for the fan speed and the climate, or when you change it to the music settings for the volume and the tuning. While you now have a fully digital 12.3-inch instrument cluster in the top variants, which is intuitive to use and has crisp graphics like in other Kia cars, we wish the Clavis got the latest iteration of Kia's infotainment suite as seen in the Ceros and Carnival. Yes, this unit is still easy to use and fluid enough, but the newer system builds on this and offers wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Now, some other minor changes that have been made in the front of the Clavis is that the seats, at least the seat cover, is new. But what hasn't changed is that great practicality that was always in the currents. So you still have this kind of open feel, the windows are so large, you have this nice sweeping dash in front of you, and this open kind of center console and the door bin. So all of that remains. So what you do have now is of course a wireless charger here, which is great by itself. It's placed conveniently. You can put a big large phone here, as you can see. So that's good. And you also have that massive amount of storage that was always a positive. So these cup holders have that AC kind of vent cooling system to it. Now that you have a parking brake, that's freed up a little bit more space here, and this very deep central cubby. And that sense also continues to the door pockets, where you can put 2 or 3 big bottles very easily. We also spent some time in the mid-spec HTK Plus trim, which could be a great value choice if you aren't moved by top-tier equipment. It doesn't feel bare bones. Yes, you have a smaller 8-inch touchscreen, but this unit offers wireless connectivity. There are more physical controls here, especially the easy-to-use climate functions. You don't have as much of the high-quality finishes, but the fabric upholstery and grey trim looks contemporary and feels premium enough. Now, one of the things that we liked with the previous Carens was just how easy it was to access the third row, and thankfully that's not changed at all. So yeah, if you're being a bit lazy, you can always walk through here, but you won't want to do that. So what you can do is just flip and tumble the seat, and there's a really big opening now. So even if you're much larger than say I am, you can easily enter into the third row. Now, as you can see, this is with the second row completely pushed back, and I'm about 5'6", and I have just enough knee and leg room. As you can see, my feet tuck under the seat, which is good, but I have just enough knee room. Of course, I can then adjust this seat a little bit here and there because you have that boss function now. So space here, if you are under 6 feet, say about 5'6" to 5'8", 5'9", I think should be enough even for adults, which is great considering on the outside this is not a very big car. And I can also recline this to quite an acute angle, as you can see, so I can really be quite comfortable here even on fairly long distances. Now, of course, there are those usual sort of drawbacks that you expect in the third row, so I don't really have much in the way of thigh support. I have my own lighting here, my own air vents, my own chargers, and now because I have a sunroof, it's a slightly airier feel than earlier, even though these glass houses were always quite large. This being a mid-cycle update, the Clavis gets largely cosmetic changes. The new face has brought with it a 20mm increase in length and now brings the Clavis in line with Kia's newest design themes. So you have the new angular light signature and triangular light clusters. These are placed in a more sharply defined EV-like fascia. The discrete integration of the ADAS sensors in the top-spec trim is great attention to detail. Like with other Kia models, numerous light cluster arrangements are available, as seen with the single projector setup in the HTK Plus variant. These also get slightly different air dams and light signatures. In profile, the more noteworthy change is that the top-spec versions of the Clavis get sharper-looking 17-inch wheels. Aside from this, you have a more contemporary selection of contrasting trims. Lesser variants continue with 16-inch wheels. Ground clearance should be about 195mm. At the rear, the Clavis now gets a similar look as the Sonet and Seltos, with the full-width lighting and vertically stacked, slatted look to the tail lamps. Here too, the lower variants have retained a similar arrangement convincingly, but with halogens. Now, with an MPV like the Kia Carens Clavis, one thing that is important is kind of luggage carrying capacity that it has. So now with this update, it still has 216 liters, and as you just see here, it's got enough space for quite a few trolley bags, overnighters, small backpacks. So even if you're traveling with 3 or 4 people, you will be sorted. But I can also fold these down completely flat, which gives me a very useful 645 liters. As you can see, it's a completely flat bed here. The lip is also quite low, so I can put big items, lift them up very easily with this large opening. And then I can also fold down the second row for really large items. Say if you're moving houses and need to carry, say, a big piece of furniture, then you have 1145 liters. The Clavis gets a familiar set of engine and gearbox combinations. So the base 1.5 litre naturally aspirated petrol continues, as does the 1.5 turbo with its 160 PS and 253 Nm. The higher spec motor continues with a 6-speed IMT and a 7 DCT as senior, along with the newly added manual option. The 1.5 diesel with its 116 PS and 250 Nm is also available. You can have this engine with a manual on quite a few trims, but the 6-speed auto is limited to a single mid-spec version. Now between the turbo DCT and the diesel AT versions of the current Clavis that we're driving, I think the diesel AT suits it better for obvious reasons. To start with the diesel, with that typical diesel power delivery and torque delivery, in the lower end I feel like it has a bit more pep, so when you're loaded up with a lot of people, I think this will be the variant to get, because it just sets off the line a bit more confidently. The petrol is slightly more hesitant. It feels like it's not quite hitting its stride, say below 2000 RPM. So well, in the city, if you use the currents as a day-to-day commuter, the turbo petrol is just fine. It has that sharp turbo petrol edge that you want in a slightly fun car, so it has that going for it. The gearbox pairs intuitively in both versions. Unlike in the Seltos, you don't get a sport gearbox mode, which narrows the gap between the DCT and AT. It's best to be measured with the throttle in both. They take a bit of time to downshift, but this improves in the petrol as you rev it out. The AT in the diesel isn't quite as energetic, but it is helped by its more linear torque delivery. So if you are doing long distance trips, then that helps as well. As for the turbo petrol, when you start driving a bit faster with a bit more enthusiasm, that's when you start to sort of benefit from it, where you notice that you have a bit more performance as you keep revving out the engine. You have more revs to play with. With the heavier nose and skinnier 16-inch wheels, the diesel isn't quite as composed as the turbo around bends. You have to be more conscious of your speed since movements here are a touch less steady. The engine too needs a bit more time to react, which makes for a less fluid experience. So it does feel like it's a bit better connected to the road, especially this turbo DCT version, which has been tuned a bit more to focus on the driver, I feel. So what you do feel is that on a winding set of road, it manages its weight a little bit better. Its body movements are predictable. It feels very car-like, even though this is an MPV and it is the heaviest iteration of this family of cars from Hyundai and Kia. It feels very much like a car in terms of how the Seltos feels. And it has that little bit of driver engagement the Seltos also offers. So all of that is there. So you have a pretty good idea what the car is doing. If you point it in a direction, it will go there. Like I mentioned, it takes corners quite confidently. So you can maintain high speeds around corners. It doesn't matter in an MPV. But the general sense is that you feel comfortable. The Kia Clavis should be priced between Rs 11 lakh to Rs 21 lakh ex-showroom. It may not still have the top-tier tech of the Seltos, but makes up for it with a fairly competent list of features. The petrol version is a great family car for every situation, while the diesel ticks most of the boxes you might want to check with the car you will spend long distances in. As before, the great practicality and space that is difficult to find in this footprint and price range will be the main reason you will be drawn to the Clavis.